Hey everybody, this is Chris with Overclockers Club. It is time to check out another graphics card from Nvidia. So the big announcements at CES this year were the RTX 4070 Super, that's a Founders Edition card, the RTX 4070 Ti Super, which is only available, as you see there are no Founders Edition cards. And then we have a Founders Edition version here of the 4080 Super. And let's go ahead and open the box. There we go. Just like the 4070 Super there, we have the all black sort of stealthy look. Again, anything that's shiny is not really chrome. It's just the way the light is reflecting off of it. All right, so let's take a look at some of the exterior features of the 4080 Super. This is a 4080 Supreme. I think this is Supreme X from MSI. And I looked at that a while back. You can see this card is considerably larger than, actually this is a 4090. I've got another 4080 Founders Edition around here somewhere. But this is the 4090. You can see it is a bit larger. And of course this here is the 4080. So the chassis there and the frame of the 4080s and 4090s, the Founders Edition cards are all the same. So you can see again, it's 4090, 4080 Super, and again they are the same dimensionally, other than the way it's painted. This one, of course, again it's all black. So this is most likely the very last card in the 40 series. I really don't think we're going to see any other 4090 extensions, any 4090 Ti's or Supers or anything like that. So I believe this is the last one that we will see released. Well, I already got fingerprints all over it. Anyway, this should be the last one that we see until the 50 series come out, whenever that is. Again, looking at it, the exterior, if you've seen a 4090 or a 4080 Founders Edition, you've pretty much seen this one. But the business end there, you can see we've got the standard 3 display ports and 1 HDMI. It is a 3-slot card, triple slot card, and has the same connector that we see on all of the earlier cards. So I think we can go ahead and just get this powered up and start doing some synthetic and gaming benchmarks, and we'll look at the power usage and the sound. The amount of sound from the fans. And it's funny to look at these when you get them side by side. So this is a 4070 Super. And you don't realize, this card's got some weight to it, and it seems kind of large maybe, until you compare it to the 4080s and 4090s, the Founders Edition cards. They are so much larger and heavier. So that's something you want to consider if you're trying to squeeze this into your existing case. You need to make sure dimensionally that it'll fit, or if you're planning a new system build, you want to look ahead and make sure this will fit in your case. Otherwise, you may be looking for a different case. All right, so we got it all powered up. You can see it does have some lighting effects in there, sort of a white accent. Those are not RGB, so you can't change the color. The GeForce text here lights up. A little hard to see in the light, but it does have a nice glow to it. And then there's the same little lighting accent right in here that we have on the other side of the card. And something else to point here on the power connector. You do want to make sure that your power plug here is fully engaged with the socket right here on the card. And you can see right in here, there should be no gap right there at the junction between the plug and the socket, right in here. You should hear it snap in place when you plug it, and that's the little latch right here engaging the catch on the socket. You'll hear a little click. But on these higher powered cards, the 4080 and the 4090s, you do want to make sure these are plugged in thoroughly, completely. And your power cable here, you want to try to minimize the bend. Do not force this into a sharp kink or anything like that. You want to have a nice smooth radius. And actually, before I power the card up, I always try to make sure I have the latest driver, and I use the GeForce Experience. You can install that on your system and it will keep track of what the latest driver is and make sure you're always up to date. And it also has a nice game interface so that you can launch your games right from the GeForce experience. Another thing I like to have handy is my Nvidia control panel. You can download that and install it, and it lets you go in and make changes and adjustments to your graphics card. You can change the resolution, your refresh rate, a lot of other little changes you can make here. I also like to make sure that my RTX Video Enhancement Super Resolution box is checked. Okay, so we'll do some synthetic benchmarks, and then I'll do some gaming benchmarks. And this is a 3440 by 1440, 144 hertz Viotech monitor. And my logic with the settings on the games, I cranked them all the way up because, you know, you can dumb everything down and sure you'll get great frame rates, but for me the test really shows how well your graphics card can knock out the higher frame rates when the settings are cranked all the way up. And worst case, if you have a game where you have to dumb things down just a little bit, on the lower end cards maybe, but your higher end cards, that's not really much of a concern. And I got a cool new Elvis sign too. All right, so we'll do a little Borderlands 3, and then we'll do some Cyberpunk 2077 and a little F122, and then we'll move on to the synthetic benchmarks. I'm just running around the game right now. I'll go ahead and jump into the benchmark mode. Okay, so these are the numbers that I've been compiling throughout the entire 40 series. And again, I believe this is the last one in the series. I don't think we're going to see any other cards in the 40 series. You never know, they could sneak something else out there, but as far as I know, this is it. So, starting with the 4060, and I did throw the 3070 Ti in there just for reference down here at the end. We got the 4060, 4060 Ti, 4070, 4070 Super, 4070 Ti, 4070 Ti Super, 4080. I had two different versions of the 4080 there. 4080 Super, and of course the 4090. And again, you can see as you look along the numbers here, they pretty much scale and fall right in line, especially with the 4080. Again, 4080 Super falls right in between the 4090 and the 4080, which is the intention. Of course, we're just filling in the gaps here, giving people more options, different price points that still give you really good performance without going to the next level up if price is a concern. So again, everything pretty much scales. I did get a couple of weird numbers here on the VR Mark Orange Room, Cyan Room, and the Blue Room. For some reason, I kept getting a really high spike here, and I ran this card several times, ran it on a different machine, reran these cards back to back, and I was getting pretty much the same numbers. So I'm not real sure what's going on here. I mean, it's a high number, that's a good thing, but I really would have expected the 4090 to, you know, be consistently higher than we see here. But like I said, not real sure what's going on there. But anyway, the numbers again scale, and if you look at the price point for each card, it just depends on where you want to come in, pricing versus performance. And while we're talking about games, the list of games continues to grow, the games that support the latest Nvidia DLSS. So check out your games that you like to play and see if there isn't an update or some new version coming out or a new title that you might be interested in. Chances are it will support DLSS 3, and if it doesn't, it probably will in the future. All right, so now we're going to look at some of the power usage of the card. One of the claims to fame that Nvidia has been touting is they're getting more performance while using less power. And that's always good because that means your efficiency goes up. So one way we can measure the power usage in real time, especially when the card's under load. We've got this little circuit board here. This is part of the Nvidia PCAT system, and this little riser basically mounts to the motherboard here. If I get that to pop in, and then the graphics card sits on top of that, and then basically the power from the power supply will plug in here, and it exits here and goes over to the graphics card. And this will monitor in real time the power that's basically going to the card. So we'll see that here in just a moment. And when using the PCAT, you can see that riser really spaces the card pretty high off the motherboard, and you really don't want any graphics card moving around, especially one this heavy. So I made a couple of supports there out of Delrin, one at the front, one at the back, to keep the card level and reasonably stable while I do the testing. And when the card is powered up, you can see there's a little display that measures the wattage, or the power used, and then the voltage in real time. We actually have some software here that we can fire up, and we can actually see what these numbers look like. And here's what the PCAT software looks like when it's running. You can see right now, other than a couple of blips, we're idling way down here in the 10 to 15, 20 watts, somewhere in that range. Yeah, average right there, 20 watts. And what we'll do here is we'll put the GPU under a load, and then we'll watch how much power is being used, and we'll see if it's hitting the target that Nvidia says this card should be using. And we'll use the MSI combustor software just for that purpose. You can see the GPU temperature starts to creep up. Right at about 50 C is when the fans kick on, if you don't have a custom fan profile already defined. So we'll let this run for a little bit, get a good thermal soak on the card so everything normalizes, and then we'll look at the power usage. Okay, we've been running now for a while and everything is good and stable. You can see our average is around 311 watts with a peak of 344. The TDP for this card is around 320 watts, so we're right there where we need to be. And the recommended power supply is 750 watts. You really shouldn't go anything below that because you need power to drive the card as well as the motherboard and everything else connected to it. So everything looks pretty good here. And after we stop the MSI combustor, you can see we drop right down to the idle. And while we are just idling along here, let's go ahead and bump the fan speed all the way up so you can hear what the fans sound like. When they're running slowly, of course, you don't hear anything. That's to be expected. But let's go ahead and bump these up to 100. And you can certainly hear them. But of course, normally you're not going to be running these things at 100%. And with the card inside of a case, things will be much quieter too. So if we go back down to a more normal level, you can see they definitely quiet down to where you pretty much can't even hear them. And now I want to talk a little bit here about folding at home. If you're not familiar with folding at home, you can go to foldingathome.org. But what this does is it uses the processing power of your GPUs, and your latest 40 series GPUs here from Nvidia. All of these actually have some amazing processing power. And what you can do, and this is part of distributive computing, so you're using all of your computers around the world to crunch numbers on these large projects, these research projects that simulate the way proteins are synthesized, and when they're being constructed in your cells, they basically fold into different shapes. And I should clarify, people with computers all around the world that download the Folding at Home software and run these simulations, you can use your CPU or your GPU, but your GPU runs circles around what your CPU can do as far as the folding performance. But anyway, you can run these simulations in the background, and this is an example of what's sort of happening. So you can see these are all the atoms of this particular protein and the molecules that are all coming together, and as they're being assembled, they fold at different times in the process. And if there's a misfold for whatever reason, you can have all kinds of diseases, sicknesses, Alzheimer's. So the research that is being done here is going towards solving these diseases, finding cures, finding treatments. And this is the interface. This is the Folding at Home interface, and you can see here what's happening with the project that you're folding at any given time. And you accumulate points, and you can see we're a little over 19 million points per day. And each project is different. You'll get more points, less points, just depends on the project and what GPU you have, but it does vary. But anyway, these points aren't really worth anything. You don't really cash them in, but you can join a folding team with other people that are folding, and then you can sort of compete with the other teams to try and get the most points. And each project has a certain number of points assigned to it. So the more points or the more projects you work on, the more powerful your GPU, the faster you'll accumulate the points. So it's sort of a fun way to help out. You know, one thing I find interesting to look back historically at these older graphics cards and how the technology has changed and the performance has changed. And for example, this is an old GTX 680. Back in the day, 2012, when this was released, this was a hot card to have. In fact, I've got two of them here. So these released for $499 each. So there would be pretty much $1,000 right there between these two cards. And if you're old enough to remember, people would run these in SLI mode if you had Nvidia cards. And you would use these little cables. Sometimes they would come in 2 and 3 and 4 connectors, and you would chain your cards together like this so that they would communicate with each other and you would get better gaming performance. And if your motherboard could handle it, some people would run 3 and even 4 graphics cards all together. And boy, what a nightmare of keeping them all cool when they starve each other for air when they're stacked up like that. But anyway, the point I was wanting to make, if you look at the performance back in the day versus the cost, and then we look at a card today like the 4090, for example, and look at the price. You know, when this came out, it was originally, what, close to $2,000, and now they're around $1,600, $1,599. So the price has come down a little bit. And this is the king of the hill, the top dog. And it's hard to believe that one day you may look back at this like you'll look at the 680 and go, it's okay. Will that be 5 years from now, 10, 15, who knows? But just hard to believe one day we may be there with that card like we were with the good old 680. And really, pretty much all you see are single graphics cards. You don't really see the multiples like you used to, and you really don't need to. The power and performance that you get with single graphics cards anymore just wipes away the need for multiple cards. So SLI really isn't a thing anymore. In fact, I think it's no longer supported, maybe a generation or so ago. With the 30 series, and I think it's something called NVLink for special applications. But again, you know, mainstream SLI stuff is really a thing of the past. And I put together this little slide of information. There's a lot going on here, and the print is a little small. But all of this information came from the Nvidia website, and I recommend checking that out if you really want to get into the details about all of the latest Nvidia technology, because there's a lot there to cover, and if I try to cover everything, I guarantee you I will put you to sleep. So for reference here, you can sort of glance through each card and look at the specifications and compare them, and you get an idea of each step up in each card version and what it has inside, or I guess you could say under the hood. And like I said, there's more information available at the Nvidia website, but like I said, this is just a quick reference. And let's go over to the pricing. Now, when these cards first came out, and I think it's the same with probably every new series release, but there was a lot of debate, or I guess we can call it discussion, over the price, where people thought it should be, the value of the card, performance versus price, comparing it to previous releases and what you got for that performance. And you know, right or wrong, my way of looking at it is there's a price to pay anytime you want to join that club of getting the newest model that comes out. I mean, look at automobiles. People wait in line and order cars and wait for months and months to get a new vehicle, a special new car that just comes out. And after you get it, there's a lot of, you know, there's that big depreciation hit. And there's that price for owning that new car with that new car smell right off the showroom floor. If you wait a year, 2 years, 3 years, you can save an enormous amount of money and you end up with pretty much the same car. And it's kind of that way with graphics cards. You know, it's one of those things where you look at Corvettes, for example. I always go back to car analogies. But you know, your Corvettes come in a variety of performance options, so you go from barely affordable at the bottom all the way up to, oh my god, affordable or unaffordable at the high end. And you can complain to GM all you want about where you think the pricing should be, and they really don't care. It is what it is. They're going to sell that car to somebody else if you don't like the price. Or you wait 2 or 3 years or 5 years and you get one that's come down a little bit. And it's the same thing, like I said, with graphics cards. If you think the cost of that new card, a $2,000 4090, is too much, wait a year, 2 years, and you're going to get that 4090 for less money. And you're still going to get a card that has top performance. Even your mid-range cards, you know, a few years from now are still going to be pretty powerful, and you're going to see them at better values. So when we look at the pricing here, you can see at the left the 4090 has come down. It started out around $2,000, and you can pick these up for around $1,599, more or less sometimes depending upon the sales. And the 4080 comes in, the 4080 Super, I should say, the card we're looking at today, comes in at $999. So that's, you know, for performance that's a little below the 4090, but not that far off. You know, it's quite a bit less. Now, $1,000 is still a lot of money to pay for a graphics card. So that's why Nvidia offers all the other varieties, going all the way down to the 4060 Ti. Of course, you're not going to get performance anywhere close to what you get with the 4080 or, you know, the 4070s even. But you do have some options. And if you look at a graphics card as an investment, like a monitor or a motherboard, most people don't change those things every year. You build your system and you run the daylights out of it for 3, 4, 5, maybe even close to 10 years before you do an upgrade. Then you're going to get a lot of value out of your investment over time. Now, if you're trading in your stuff like you do a car every year or two, then yeah, you're going to have a lot more money going out the door if you want to stay on top of the performance. And now that I've seen all 3 of the super cards that are within the 40 series, I have to say I think Nvidia has done a really good job at coming back and filling in the gaps, filling in the performance and the pricing gaps. So you don't have just a small, medium, and large option anymore. You've got some other options sort of wedged in between, which is not a surprise. We've seen this with previous releases, and we will certainly see this again. Like I said, it's not really a surprise, but it's just nice to see them follow through. And the 4080 Super gives you an option at $999 to get some serious performance, maybe not exactly up there with the 4090, but about as close as you're going to get. In fact, it is as close as you're going to get. So the upside down 4080 Super, I have to say I would give it the Overclockers Club Gold Award. So this is Chris with Overclockers Club. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.